Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Whatever We Want with J and K. She is K Kalala Elliott.
And he is J Jamal Sterling.
You know how many times I almost say I'm K and you're J?
I'm trying to figure out why. I guess just have it, right?
I'm just an actor who knows lines, and
that is true. I wish I could explain to folks how, when we have to record tags at the end of the show, we try and mix it up so it's not always my voice or always your voice. And I think we had to re-record some tags, and I sent you a script, but it wasn't literal. It wasn't word for word. What I wanted you to say was say such and such, and then insert this here. And you read basically you read the stage direction. You were like,
the line. I'm Ron Burgundy. I will read the
script.
Pause here. I will read it. Pause here.
Oh my gosh. Well, what's going on, homeboy? Listen, I'm sorry, before we get into it, I just want to say today is April 23rd that we're recording this. So I know a lot of folks are still catching up on the first. I think we've dropped 3 episodes at this point, having come back for the second part of season 3.
Look at us being consistent. We
are being consistent. Listen, now that we're getting back into the swing of things, but lots has been happening in the news. So what you got on your plate?
All right, so first, we got to talk about the thing that we have to always talk about because it will not stop happening, but we need to keep talking about it. Otherwise, it won't be talked about. There's shootings in America this week, all over the place, And the weird thing this week was just shootings happening when they didn't need to happen because
not even close to being needed.
So this is an article from NBC News. Shot from.
I'm sorry, Jamal. Would you repeat that?
Shootings for.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? You dropped out. Could you re-repeat that? Where the
source? Okay, let's start again. So shootings all across America this week. We cannot stand it, but it keeps happening. NBC News report. This is an article I'm reading. Shot for making a mistake. America reels from shootings of Ralph Yarl, Kaylin Gillis, and Texas cheerleaders. And let me read the front of this because it's just ridiculous to read. A 16-year-old boy rang the wrong doorbell. A 20-year-old woman turned into the wrong driveway. Teenage cheerleaders stopped outside a supermarket, and one of them got into the wrong car. In all 3 cases, and seemingly harmless occurrences culminated in horrific gun violence. Ralph was shot in the head. Kaylin was shot dead. Peyton Washington and a friend were injured. So in America, and this is not even in Atlanta 2 days ago at a gas station, person was walking back from the gas station, walking from paying for the gas, walking back to their car, looking at their phone. They made a mistake and got into the passenger seat of the wrong car, opened the door, sat down, got shot immediately and killed. No. And this doesn't happen other places.
It does not happen other places. And let me just say, I'm familiar, unfortunately, with all these stories as well. The one with the cheerleaders, these are young girls. I mean, all of these are young people, by the way. I think the oldest, I don't know about the most recent one in Atlanta, but the other ones, we're talking about young people under the age of 18 in each one of those scenarios. I think the only exception was the young lady in upstate New York may have been 21, but all the other ones were under 18. And the cheerleaders, that one struck me because the young ladies, I guess they're preparing to go to cheerleading championship, right? Yep. And so they were carpooling to be safe, and they were meeting in the parking lot of a local grocery store. And what happened was she got in the wrong vehicle, immediately apologized. That's the thing. Apologized. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong vehicle. Got out of the vehicle, went to the right car. This person still pursued her and the other young lady. So not that any of those are justifiable, but in the instance where someone literally says, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake here.
Well, in the Ralph Yarl situation, the young man, this is probably the most popular, most known one. Mm-hmm. Ralph Yarl was simply going to go pick up his little sisters from their friend's house. Wrong address. His parents sent him the wrong address by mistake. And he goes up to the door, knocks on the door. Dude, without saying a word, opens the door and shoots him. Shoots immediately and then tells him, don't come back here. And this young man got shot in the head, shot in the arm, and had to run for his life to get back to safety. And that the gentleman who did this, an 84-year-old gentleman who admittedly says he's scared to death and he saw a gigantic black man at his front door
A
Ralph
gigantic
Yarl is,
black man, a
Ralph
small
Yarl
young
is
child.
16 years old. He is I think he's not even 170 pounds,
Yeah,
not
but
even
young.
5'9", 5'8". A gigantic black man.
But so and I want to make sure I didn't wanted to give you a second to finish. I didn't want to cut you off, but in each of these cases, if I'm not mistaken, except for the one with the cheerleaders, who do you know the common denominator in terms of I'm asking if they were all white men.
Oh no, honestly, the shooters. So in the Texas situation, the shooter's
I know
actually
he was not. Yeah,
he's Hispanic male. In the
Yeah.
New York situation where the young lady, so this one we didn't talk about, a young lady pulled into a driveway,
right.
tried to turn around. She did not get out of her
Right.
car.
She
She got
didn't even,
shot.
yeah,
Both in that instance were both white.
yeah.
This isn't necessarily race based. It's all improper use of gun based.
Right. Well, and that's where I was going was I think, as you like to famously say, both things can be true, which
Right.
is I think one, we live in a gun obsessed culture. We know that's not
Right.
even a question here, right? Even more so here in these southern states, here in Texas. But I do think I've been reading a lot about these shootings lately, these specific shootings, and there's a growing theory that these are people's responses to honestly the fear mongering that's been happening for so many years, that basically they coming for you. They coming for you and your home and your stuff and all that. So all of this fear mongering that we've gotten courtesy of so-called right-wing conservative folks, but really folks who are racist and who are straight up pushing white supremacist values, they have managed to get a foothold. I mean, it's not that we live in a country where people were already racially biased and enacting on those instincts, but it's gotten to the point to where I believe, and that's kind of the theory that's being promoted, which is because of a lack of consequences in many of these cases. Because when we look back at like Trayvon Martin, we look at all these cases, the so-called stand your ground states, they've set this precedent essentially of you can kill folks, particularly people of color, especially Black people, and get away with it, and you can be protected by the law. And so I think a lot of folks have, and again, it's being theorized a lot, and I tend to agree with it, that a lot of folks have seen people get away with this and are like, why not? Especially you're 84 years old, you presume that you have sympathy, right? Like you're able to play the card of I was afraid. But again, to your point, and I will say, listen, a really good attorney could probably spin that, right? They could say this person was suffering from dementia. They could do whatever, but it's the pattern.
They're already doing it in the Ralph Yarl case. They're already trying to do that.
Of course. But to your point, it's a bigger issue. It's a clear pattern. And I not to completely sidestep this, but recently, I think here in not here in Texas, but in Oklahoma, several council members were caught on tape literally talking about lynching Black people, talking about harming journalists and what have you. So when we're living in a state like that, or in an environment like that, where people not only feel that they can say whatever, but essentially do whatever and be protected by the law, we're going to see more of these, unfortunately, I think.
Well, I have a different viewpoint, in a sense, not viewpoint, but have you ever fired a gun?
Nope.
No, you never fired a gun before.
And do not want to.
Yeah, see, strangely enough, our common friend Cliff, I've for the first time during the pandemic, because during the pandemic we did all the things we never used to do, I went to a gun range for the first time and fired a gun. And it is the first time for me. I've seen guns all my life. I'm from Detroit. Guns in Detroit are no big deal.
Same.
And guns where you're from, hunting culture and all that stuff, all the same.
And I grew up with law enforcement.
Right. It's same.
Yeah.
But it's funny you brought up law enforcement. I was thinking about a cousin I had who was a cop. And my cousin would say cops, he said the goal he was taught as being a police officer is you're trying not to use your gun. It is the last of last resorts. And the feeling of firing a gun, the feeling, I understand it. I get it. I get the power aspect of it. I get it. Like, it's like, wow, you're holding a whole lot of power. But for me, shooting it felt like this is too much. I understand using it. I understand the gravity of using it. I understand it being a last resort. And I think what's happening because people being so desensitized now, and like you said, all this fear mongering, that they don't even say in the Raphael case, the man didn't say a word. In Atlanta, they didn't say a word. They shoot, then they ask questions afterwards. And it's like, damn, like, how do you defend from that other than restricting guns? What is the other way?
That's the thing to me, Jamal, that as all of these stories have rolled out this past week, we've talked about this countless times on this show.
Right.
Like, you and I, neither of us are anti gun ownership. We're just pro responsible gun ownership.
Yes.
But I've been wrestling with that same question this week, which is, at what point, like, as much as I've never been one to been like, take the guns, honestly, the more these things happen, I'm like, and I'm not saying that I endorse that idea, but I am saying, at what will it take,
right,
for this country? And I know, honestly, it's the horse is out the gate, right? I know that there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, here in terms of being able to have people possess guns here, but I just, every year, every day, every week, it gets worse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't imagine, and I'll go a step further. It's not just that it gets worse in terms of the severity of the crimes, but it gets worse in terms of you hit the nail on the head when you use the word desensitized.
Right.
How desensitized we've come to these deaths, like, to where it's just like every week we're shocked, and then it.
Yeah.
And then what?
And then once again, just to reiterate, it just doesn't happen anywhere
But
else.
I blame the American people.
Yeah.
I blame the American people, because at the end of the day, all of these legislators who get in there and they vote according to, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, when they get in there and they vote according to their allegiances or whoever has, donated to their campaigns or what have you. At the end of the day, we are the voting public. We get to decide if we are in agreement with their behavior, and overwhelmingly, the voting public has decided they're okay with that. So even when I hear, when you and I talk about it, or when I hear other commentators, you can hear the frustration in everyone's, argument. But I also push back on us, the American public, saying, if we want something to change, we have to vote these people out who decide to put profit over people, point blank, period.
Because the strange thing about this is that this knows no race, no color.
No.
Everybody's getting shot all over the place.
Yep.
All like it's so I love when we always talk about the code word when you hear conservatives say Chicago. Chicago means black people. That's what they say that. But there's problems. But to be honest, there's problems in Chicago, just like there's problems in a whole bunch of areas, urban and rural. And it's all in common. It's black people, white people, old people, young people, guns. We have to we're just going to keep yelling about it, but some type of legislation has to be passed for responsible gun ownership. It should be harder for me to get a gun than it is for me to get a damn driver's license or voter registration.
Hello, somebody.
Or a fucking beer.
No, seriously.
So I don't know, man. It's
oh man.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So yeah, I always bring, me, I always bring the depression. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. And I'm sorry to back you up, because I got some more depressing news.
Let's go for it. Depression.
It is April 23rd that we're recording this. We are just a few days, a little over a week away from what was Black Maternal Health Week. April 11th through the 17th is Black Maternal Health Week. The United States, it has one of the worst maternal health rates in the world.
That is please say that again. That is mind-boggling.
Yeah, throughout the entire developed world, the United States has some of the worst maternal health rates. Women and birthing people are dying for unnecessary reasons, including racial bias. Black women, of course, when anything is bad, it's even worse for Black folks.
100%.
So Black women, even more so, have, I think, compared to our counterparts, we are, when it comes to white women specifically, we are 2.5 to 2.6 times more likely to die during pregnancy, during labor, and up to a year after childbirth. So we're just coming off of Black Maternal Health Week. I encourage you to go to the CDC's website. They just released new data as recent as this March, where the figures came out that we continue to see these rates rise, not decline. They're continuing to rise. So I'm bringing all of this up because here in Texas, there is a family who is being caught in the midst of this Black maternal health crisis. And what I mean is, to counter a lot, the reason part of the reason that the Black maternal health crisis exists, quite frankly, is racial bias. And so there are means and methods in place to try and counter that, including the inclusion of doulas and midwives and other birth workers who are not traditionally trained, but who historically we know have been there, have helped to deliver healthy babies. And it wasn't until, and we could go into a long diatribe. I'd love to have a special episode where we really just talk about this issue much more in depth. But all of that to say, the medical community has usurped birth and delivery and even pregnancy as a whole. So what they did was, because so many women, particularly women of color, were holding the roles of midwives and doulas, they were pushed out of the established medical community so white male physicians could have the run of the show. So you get where we're going here. So all that to say, midwives and doulas are often treated as if they are not qualified or knowledgeable medical professionals, but they are very well versed in what it takes to rear and to bring a child into this world safely. So all that to say, recently here in Texas, a couple right outside of Dallas, Rodney and Tamesia Jackson, and I apologize if I mispronounce her name, had a baby girl. Their baby girl, Mila, was taken away from the couple from their home by CPS. Long and the short of it is that the baby was born by a midwife at their home. She showed signs of jaundice a few days later. I think they went to her pediatrician or went to the doctor's office where she was seen by a nurse practitioner, not the doctor himself. And the doctor immediately wrote a complaint, basically saying the family had to bring her into a hospital, had to undergo these treatments. Now, the baby was already improving. Her condition was improving. She was being treated by the midwife. So it wasn't like the baby was getting worse. The baby was improving. Long story short, they, in submitting the complaint to CPS, attached the wrong mother's name and information to the baby's case file, and the mother whose information was attached had been accused of abuse and some other things. So long story short, these people were separated from their child. I think the baby is probably a little older, over a month old as of this recording. I don't think she has been returned to them. So it's just another so
and I've heard this before. I've heard this story.
And it's just another example. This happens a lot, actually. This basically state sanctioned kidnapping of children because they don't necessarily agree with, again, midwives and doulas often get very bad reputations when not deserving. It's worth saying, and we'll put a link in the show notes just so you can kind of learn more about this issue. But if you're here in Dallas, please reach out to the Afia Center, who I think is helping to support this family. It's just awful to see this
like
family.
The jaundice condition, the condition of jaundice that you just talked about, that is very common with babies.
Very common.
That's the first thing I heard when I heard the story on NPR. I was like, oh, but that happens with a lot of babies. I think India had that problem. My daughter. But to take the child away for that is like, yeah, that's weak,
Yeah, very weak. And especially again, once you can see that the baby is doing fine, progressing and improving well. So, but these racial bias do play a huge part in these decisions that are made every day. So just praying that little Misha, I think that's her name. Little Mila is returned to her parents safely and quickly. So just wanted to lift up that story here. Sorry, it was a depressing one, but an important one to share for sure.
Well, I have a little bit of sort of good news.
What's up?
We've talked about this in the house before, but we have to mention it because there's some conservatives who listen. I know there's at least two conservatives that listen to my listen to this podcast.
Let's just offend everybody.
So we know that at least two listen to it. So I just want to make sure because they might not be getting this news because they don't really watch real news. So,
oh goodness,
Fox News settles with Dominion at the last second, pays more than $787 million to avert defamation trial over its 2020 election loss.
Wait, let me pop some corn. I can never do it right, but
we did. So Fox News reached a settlement with Dominion Voting Systems on Tuesday as the case raced towards opening statements, paying more than $787 million to end a colossal 2-year legal battle that publicly shredded the right-wing network's credibility. So for those who don't know, and I know some of you, if you are a Fox News watcher and don't watch anything else, you are quite literally hearing this for the first time. So I'm going to say this very slowly. The network that you love lies to you for profit. That is what their whole model is based on lying to you. It is 100% that. So so before you get into the whole, but MSNBC does the same thing, NPR does the same. No. MSNBC, I'll admit, is slanted. My wife watches it way too much.
Biased, but it's not untrue.
But it's not lies.
Right. Like I'm biased about my relationship with family and friends, but I don't lie about what they do. Like,
He's a lie. Yeah. He's a lie. So they've been lying to them, saying that the voting systems were rigged, and that's why Trump lost the election. While Trump, who's even admitted himself that he actually lied about this, that he's lying about this, Trump lost the election fair and square. Dominion voting systems had nothing to do with it, and Fox News was through the settlement. They don't have to admit guilt, which I'm very regretful for, because their whole business model is lies, and it wouldn't work for their money if they had to tell the truth at least one time on air. But Dominion gets the money, and everybody else is yelling this to the rafters because it needs to be said over and over and over again. If you're watching Fox News, I'm sorry to say this. I hope I offend you. You're an idiot. Yeah, unless you're into entertainment, unless you're just into the blind entertainment.
Unless you're watching it because you're a comedian preparing your jokes. Like, if you're watching it for listen, you and I talk about this all the time. The SNL's Weekend Update is the best part of the show, right? Like,
it is. It's by far.
So if you're watching it together, material for your late night talk show or for your news informational program, great. But just, I should say news satire program. But yeah, if that's your source of information, first of all, where you been?
Right.
Like, should not be news. But second of all, how much more do you need to know that the emperor has no clothes?
And the thing is, like, while we're joking about this, these lies have real world consequences.
Absolutely,
I believe, and I think it's the guy stated this week, Ralph Yarl, that young man who was picking up his sisters, was killed because the old man was sitting in the house watching Fox News, being scared of black people.
Yep.
So we just have to yell it as much as we can. If anybody comes with that Fox News mess, it is not the same thing. There's no equality between Fox News and other news sources. One may be jaded, the other one is lies. That is not an equal footing at all.
Well, it's funny that you bring this up, because I've got some more interesting news related to the previous election cycle. Did you know that Facebook may owe you money?
I saw this, but I'm too lazy to figure out how to get my money back.
Well, let me just give you a quick little rundown. According to CNBC, Facebook users who had an active U.S. account, a U.S.-based Facebook account between the May 2007 and December of 2022 have until August of this year to claim their share of a $725 million class action settlement against Facebook. The lawsuit apparently alleges for privacy violations from the social media company, and were prompted in 2018 after the organization disclosed that the information of 87 million users their information was improperly shared with Cambridge Analytica. Who is Cambridge Analytica, you might ask? Cambridge Analytica was a consulting political firm based out of, I believe, Britain, and they supported the campaigns of, get ready for it, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, among others. So Jamal, you going to go claim your piece of the prize from Facebook?
Here's how lazy I am. I need you to break down how much am I going to get personally. If they said, Jamal, you're going to get for $35, I'm like, nah. If they said, Jamal, you're getting $450, I'm going to apply for that. Yeah.
I'm going to apply just because I know it's not going to be anything, but just because we don't, because everybody's saying the same thing. Oh, it's not going to be anything. So all of us who say, oh, it's not going to be anything, it'll end up being 50 cents. But if we go ahead and do it, it'll be 50 cents if we go ahead and do it. If we don't, it'll end up being like, oh, I ended up getting $500 out of that. And you'll be like, I should have filed for that.
Yeah, here's what I'm going to wait for you to do yours. And when it comes back, I want to see what your check look like.
Oh, I'm definitely going to file a claim. Well, I think what happens is you have until August. And then once they know how many people have submitted, then they are able to, because there's a, the pot is the pot. So I don't think it'll, so you see what I'm saying? Like if you wait, you won't know exactly the figure. You know what I'm saying?
All right. So it depends on how much. So I need to get in there early.
Yeah, you need to get in before August.
We should announce this then. Now all these people who
you know,
listening
it's
gonna be
funny.
like,
I did. I was like, I should know.
the rest of you people be lazy like me, and I'm gonna go and get my money.
Well, I was going to say, you know what happens? People have short attention spans, so they move on from it pretty quickly. So,
anyway. I got something. So I'll bring the ratchet stuff, and then you roll your eyes like,
oh, I got some ratchet today too. But you go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna do my ratchet first. do you know who Tasha Kay is?
I do. I know of her. I've never watched her program, but it's so funny that you mentioned her, because the ratchet that I have to talk about is related to Cardi B, but it's not that ratchet. But okay. So go ahead. Okay.
So for those who don't know who Tasha Kay is, and dear God, you shouldn't. It's terrible. I hate that I know. Let me read the headline. Cardi B is going after YouTuber Tasha Kay's property to collect $4 million debt from a lawsuit. So Cardi B is gunning for Tasha Kay's property to fulfill the $4 million debt the vlogger owes her after losing a defamation lawsuit. So basically, I'm gonna break this down real fast. This lady Tasha Kay went online on her ratchet. I watched like,
be careful talking about her show, because the whole reason she got sued was because she was saying stuff about Cardi B that she couldn't prove.
Well, I can prove this is ratchet. Oh yeah.
You're like, this is totally subjective.
It's so ratchet. And right now, the way Cardi B going after her money, she ain't got no money. She ain't gonna get no money. Anyway, so this lady, she went on about Cardi B and lied about her having venereal diseases and cheating on her husband, all types of horrible things. And I love when celebrities do this. When they're like, no, you gonna lie on me? Let me take you to court and make sure you get paid.
I'm gonna milk you dry.
Yeah, and so this lady, she sued her for $4 million. She won. So then, of course, the lady's claiming poverty. Well, I don't have $4 million. So Cardi B's like, all right, cool.
And then
give me
she
your
tried
stuff.
To skip the country at one point.
But she like, give me your stuff. I want your house. I want your stuff. Give me everything. And I love that she's. And so this lady Tasha Kay, who I cannot emphasize how ratchet her show is. Some of the titles are like, baby mama sleeps with 3 cousins, and I'm like, well, what is happening?
Oh no.
So yeah. But I would like to applaud Cardi B for going all in, like, yo, you talking noise? You're gonna give me all your money.
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because literally, I'm not joking to you, ladies and gentlemen. We promise we do not talk. We told y'all we don't talk to each other about what show topics we're going to discuss. But I literally I saw this article some time ago, and I saved it and was like, oh, we got to talk about this on the show. And it is in fact involving Cardi B. So some weeks ago, a video surfaced of what some deemed was inappropriate behavior between the Dalai Lama and a young boy. Have you heard about this?
Oh my God, yes. I don't
know all the context, so I really don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But long and the short of the story, if you're not aware, there was a video or a photo circulating of the Dalai Lama sucking or encouraging the young boy to suck his tongue. And it became a thing. I'm not finna dissect that, y'all. We can't even right here right now.
I love that you dropped the bomb.
I was like, I'm not even finished. I'm not even trying
that
to
on your own.
Right. You go process it on your own. But in regards to that happening, Cardi B took to Twitter and made the following comment. She says, quote, this world is full of predators. They prey on the innocent, the ones who are most unknowing, our children. Predators could be our neighbors, our school teachers, even people with money, power in our churches, constantly talking with your kids about boundaries and what they shouldn't, end quote. So after she probably didn't expect the response that she got. The response that she got was a lot of people coming for her, reminding her that she has admitted in the past to robbing and drugging men, or robbing drugged men, when she worked at a strip club in New York some years ago. Cardi replied to the accusations that she was not a predator and that these men, quote, wanted sex from her, and they, quote, were not vulnerable men, and that robbing grown men versus raping children is different. So I'm curious to know, let me just say one thing. I want to be very clear before we say anything else. The statement about robbing grown men versus raping children is different. Duh. I think we can all agree. Yes, that's duh. But I'm curious to know your thoughts about, do you agree with, or do you not agree with the folks on Twitter who said, "Hey, lady, you kind of a predator yourself. You really don't have a leg to stand on or to comment around on this topic."
Okay. I just want to comment first on, there's two things. Number one, I want to comment on Cardi B going online to say something that she thought was, oh, no one can come back at me at this, and then it coming back at her like, oh shit.
We reminded her that she drugged men,
right,
and stole their money.
But I just can picture Cardi B typing this like, nothing can happen from this, and then secondly, yeah,
ooh, that horse started to wobble.
All things be wrong.
Yeah, you said what now?
All things, okay, all these things are horrible. Don't grandstand if you got a history of doing terrible things. But here's the thing,
especially illegal things.
And here's the thing: Cardi B coming back on it is a weird thing. It's like, no, that's me just shut. You can't be like, well, yeah, it's cool.
Like, why is the reply?
You rob people.
She's like, that's not the same. It's
shut off the mentions.
The same, but
it's not the same, but it's bad.
Me kicking you in the face isn't as bad as maybe me kicking you in the balls, but it's still bad.
Oh yeah. So
that was such a specific example.
Yeah. So like, what the? Okay. Yeah. I think that's my.
Can we agree? Can we both agree that Cardi B is super wrong on her?
Yeah. I
was like, no, homegirl, I do believe that is the very definition of predator, is to take advantage of someone who, because I always flip it. If it were a man and there was a woman, regardless as to whether or not he was attracted to you, because her point is these men showed up at the strip club and they were interested in having sex with her, whatever. Well, girl, duh. I mean, you're at the strip club. That's why people go to strip clubs.
Imagine that.
To be tantalized. So yes, of course they want the fantasy of having sex with you and maybe the actuality of it. That's not surprising. And even if they hit on you, but there's a big difference between someone being inappropriate with you and literally choosing to drug and steal from people. Like, interestingly enough, that is a storyline on P Valley. So when we get Nico on the show, Nico, you coming on the show, Nico. We get Nico on the show. Maybe we should ask him his perspective on this.
Big brother, Nathaniel Nico on it. I said his government name. I'm sorry.
I love how you always say his full name. Hilarious.
I just love it because his name is so it's the classiest name.
Oh gosh. Well, I have another question for you. It's not so much ratchet, but it's in that vein.
Yeah. Okay. I'm nervous about it. You're getting back to the nervous question thing again. I'm worried.
Oh yeah, this one is definitely gonna make you nervous.
Oh shit.
Okay. So the New York Times recently published this article, I think maybe in March. And I apologize in advance if I mispronounce the name of this, but there's an experience called the Fude dinner experience. It's hosted by an artist and model, Charlie Ann Max. And for $88, Ms. Max will approve the applications of the guests who have come to enjoy, according to the website, a quote, liberating space that celebrates our most pure selves through plant-based cooking, art, nudity, and self-love. So according to the New York Times, basically a naked vegan party, a naked vegan dinner party with strangers. So I have a few questions. I'm looking at your face. I have a few questions. The first thing is, would you do something like this? And two, what's your feeling generally about public nudity?
You know damn hell. Okay, so as far as public nudity, as long as it ain't me, I'm good. You can do what you want.
Never go nude in public.
I don't believe. I'm
what
a firm
about for
believer.
A role? What about if you had to? What if it was a show and they asked you to do a Jesse Williams and drop trowel on stage?
See, okay, so for me, yeah, no. I'm against. I'm for the most part against nudity in general in movies, men and women. Unless like even, and I'm one of those who I don't necessarily like sex scenes, gratuitous sex scenes, just because it's like all right. It's very rarely have I ever been like, this is adding to the experience. It's more like, oh, they're all naked doing stuff. Okay, can we get back to the storyline?
I do
So,
find I enjoy them more when there are not other people around. It's very awkward. I have yet to watch a movie where it was not awkward watching a sex scene with other people in the room.
right.
When it's like your family, you're like, let's all just pretend and look away
This
and
is-
not make eye contact.
Well,
And this
listen
scene
to-
is going on for 20 minutes.
Oh, good Lord. Like, no matter, even the smallest scenes always seem like they're going on for way too long. So yeah, so the nudity and going to eat food with naked people together.
That's where they would lose me, because even those shows like Naked and Afraid, I'm like, first of all, if I'm afraid, the last thing I want is to be naked. Like, I want to be protected as best as possible when I'm afraid. Like, no. Say to Lila of a few years ago, no way I would ever venture into public nudity at all. But I'm to like a nude beach or something like that. Like, I would go somewhere where that is part of the culture, though, not like where you have to worry about people gawking, but like in places like Europe where it's part of the culture and it's no big deal and people literally aren't gawking at you. But here in the States, ain't no way.
I'm generally against. Nah, I'm good.
But yeah, I'm with you. Like the food part, you lose me at the food part. I don't like people I don't know cooking for me in general, let alone doing it naked. Like,
I'm not trying to eat this Beyond Meat spaghetti while wow, penises just dangling out everywhere and breasts all over. No, I'm good. I'm good.
Why did you automatically think of penises dangling? Because I don't, because I don't think a lot of men like willingly. I think men like seeing women be naked, but I don't hear of a lot of men like pursuing like being in nudist spaces.
Yeah, I'm good. And here's another thing that I don't think we think about enough, and I think about all the time. If you're naked, I do think about this all the time. If you're naked and you're around other people and you're eating, bodily functions still happen. And the clothes help protect. So if you cut one, there's a difference between cutting one with pants on and then, cutting one and it's just like there's no layer.
So strange and specific.
I'm just saying, I'm
bodily functions still happen. I love that the fabric is the thing that protects it.
Oh yeah, you got layers, man. You got your underwear, you got the pants. So I
guess there are multiple layers.
Yeah. And also, think about sound quality as well. Like the muffling of the fart as opposed to like just free ass, just open.
Oh my God. Fart. Oh Lord. I don't want to hear nothing else about free ass. Oh my God. Lord have mercy. All right. What else you got?
Here's a weird transition I was listening to a story this morning about a group that is really I forget what part of Mississippi it is, but a part of Mississippi, they're really trying to encourage tourism in Mississippi, and they're doing a blues tour, right? Like Indianola is one of the spots. They're talking about the hometown of BB King and trying to bring more people to Mississippi because they talk about Mississippi being like they're low in education, low in like poverty.
Yeah, I think they're like 50th in the nation.
Right. So it's like it's a conversation on NPR where I cannot remember the lady's name, but she was talking about trying to bring back tourism to Mississippi and trying to get Mississippi, but she doesn't want to whitewash tourism. So she was talking about how she would love for people to come see the blues scene and learn about all, Robert Johnson, learn about BB King and all these great blues tradition. But she also wants to connect it to civil rights and making sure that we're not homogenizing the history of Mississippi. And it got me thinking. It's something that you said to me before I went to drive to Knoxville. And it's something that's been said to me all my life, and I'm sure it's been said to you all your life. And I'm wondering if people who are not Black have ever heard this. But it's been all our lives. I've always heard, be careful when you drive through Mississippi.
Oh, okay.
Like that's the. Yeah. But like what I wonder is if that's like these things that exist within Black culture, like to talk about how we've both had to talk about police dealing with the police and being pulled over. Yeah. I think this is another one of those conversations where like I've never once been through Mississippi and told somebody when they're like, yo, you careful. Like my brother literally, when I got to Mississippi, he talked me through Mississippi. He's like, we're going to talk when we get to Mississippi, him and my boy John, because of the history of Mississippi.
Is your question, do white people have these conversations or is it solely a Black person?
The question is, I think the question is, do white people know that we have these conversations?
Oh, I'm sure they don't, to the magnitude, the way in which you're saying it right now, and most of our audience will not blink. They'll just nod along, go, of course. I'm sure that there are enough white people who are not shocked by it, but are surprised to hear it. The difference of, oh, I kind of remember vaguely hearing that, but it's a difference between knowing it as a matter of fact in terms of people's experiences. I point specifically to when the movie The Green Book came out, and how people were like surprised at that thing. Like, it didn't seem like, and it was like, literally our grandparents had the Green Book, like that is, and even if they didn't have a physical Green Book, just the understanding and knowledge that is just common practice within our culture of understanding of where you could and couldn't stop these so-called sunset towns or whatever. So I don't think that they understand it as broadly as most of us do, unless they live in the South. And even if they do, I still don't think that they have the same context, because when you're not the person who is the target, you know what I mean? Like, it's less. Think about it. Like, I'm sure that there are a lot of other cultures who get attacked and things happen to them, and we don't know the ins and outs and the specifics of their realities, right? Until they tell us. So I would imagine it's not as commonly known. It's probably more commonly known now, just because of the advent of the internet and how, more folks are sharing their experiences. But I never got the feeling growing up that my white counterparts got nervous. I'll give you a perfect example. When I was in high school, we used to go to Ole Miss often I was in ROTC, and we would go there often for competition. And I remember how excited my classmates would get. And I was like, I am petrified of going to Ole Miss. Like, the idea of going there,
to this day, I'm still shocked when like black football players are playing at Ole Miss. And I'm just like, is it because it's just
who've gone there and I don't get it?
Yeah, it's like, yo, that is one of the most racist places on earth for a long time.
I mean, I got recruited by Ole Miss, and I was like, nope. Like, I think I'm in the middle of nowhere. I was like, growing up in a small southern, in a very small southern rural town anyway, is intimidating, but at least I know my own backyard. You know what I mean? Like, in Monroe, I know, I mean, it also helped that I grew up in a law enforcement family, so I was a little more protected than I think the average person. But yeah, going into an unfamiliar Mississippi town, no way.
Was years ago, I watched this documentary about Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier talking specifically about how they used to bring money. They would bring money and funds to Mississippi to help with voter registration and stuff like that. And they had this talk with Harry Belafonte, and this Harry Belafonte like probably like five or 6 years ago, and they're doing the conversation in Mississippi. And the interviewer, you can find it on YouTube. The interviewer asks him about being in Mississippi. And then Harry Belafonte admitted that this is the first time he had been in Mississippi since 1964, and that he vowed he would never come back. And he's like, and he said when being there, he said he just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't. And I think for black people in general, going through it happened. Of course, it happens all over the place. My wife is from Vacherie, Louisiana, which is what she get mad at that. New Orleans, Louisiana, but her family grew up in Vacherie. But Vacherie, Louisiana has several plantations and stuff, and I cannot go past some plantations without thinking about, damn, what happened here?
Yeah, and she and I have a different feeling about that than you do. Like, we actually talk about that often, which is yes, there is that history to it, right? But when we drive by it, that's not all we see, right? Like, when you grow up in a place, you have the memories of the negative things that have happened, but you also have the beautiful memories too. Like, I don't just see lynched bodies when I look at magnolia trees. I think about time spent with my grandparents. I think about time making mud pies. So it's
explain to me this making mud pies thing, by the way, because I just don't get y'all played in the mud. We never played with mud pies in Detroit. I don't know what that, at least I didn't in my hood.
So you know what a pie pan is, right? Your grandmother had a pie pan, like an aluminum pie pan that she made pies in. So when your kids growing up in the country, you get those pie pans that your grandmama threw out that she's not using anymore because they used to buy them in bulk. And you go out, you get mud, you get dirt and water, you mix it up, and you make mud pies. You literally make mud pies, and you put them out and you play. Because
I disagree with this whole thing. Y'all needed more toys. Y'all had no bats, no balls.
That's called being poor in country. The same way y'all did things like what, kick cans and threw tied shoes over the I'm saying I'm just remembering something from somebody's random childhood.
I never threw no shoes.
But things that people do in the north, yeah, but that's my thing. Things that y'all did in the north, like playing kickball in the middle of the fit, you know what I'm saying? There are things that are unique to your setting because that's what's around you. So when you're around dirt and grass and everything, you play with the things that are around you. Did you ever go fishing with like getting bait, not bait, but using different kinds of fish or crawdads as bait?
I thought fishing, I hated fishing. I went fishing, but I think fishing is a waste of time. You have
now, I'll be honest, I hated fishing as a kid, but now as I'm getting older, I can appreciate the calmness and the serenity of fishing. I have no interest in doing it, but
see, I never got that. One of my best friends, he goes fishing all the time.
I come from a big family of fishers. Oh my God, I'm a black sheep in my family.
I never understood it until now. I was like, oh, this is really about hanging out with your friends. It has nothing to do with getting the fish.
Or honestly, for some people, without them understanding, this is why it's so funny, the things that we don't have language for that we began to do anyway. It was a practice in meditation. Because so particularly like when you're talking about for Black men who this might be their only opportunity to escape from home and responsibilities of life or whatever, they go out at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go fish and they're gone all day and they're sitting on that boat and all they're doing is sitting with themselves and their thoughts. Maybe they might have a book or maybe they might have some music, but generally it's just them. Yeah. So a lot of it was like solitary time. And of course, again, people at that point in time might not have said, oh, I'm going to meditate or spend time alone with myself, but that's essentially what they were doing.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that's a lot to go through. I'm just gonna go on my boat. I ain't gonna act like I'm getting fish.
I come from a long line of fishers, and I literally said recently that maybe I would try it again as an older adult because as a kid I hated it. But I've been experimenting a lot of things that I thought from when I was younger. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that, or I'll never eat that thing. And now I'm like, oh, I can change my mind. Oh, look, black eyed peas are good. Yes.
You didn't like black eyed peas?
I hated black eyed peas my entire life. Hated them. And recently I was telling Nicole, I was like, you know what? I tried something else recently and realized my taste buds had changed. So I was like, let me just go back and try some of the stuff that I always hated as a kid. Black eyed peas was one of them. I was like, I no longer hate black eyed peas. Oh, yeah.
Black eyed peas, boy, you do it up right. You get me hungry. Soul food.
Well, I do have one more story before we wrap up. And I also have a for the culture, unless you have one.
We could do a double for the culture.
Okay. Well, this will be really quick. I wanted to share that a couple weeks ago, while appearing on the Tamron Hall show, Teyana Taylor announced that she has officially signed on to play Dionne Warwick in the upcoming biopic about Dionne Warwick's life. If you don't know, this
perfect
has been a
casting.
Yes,
my God.
When you talk about dead ringer, like people have been clamoring for this casting. I recently actually had a chance. There's a documentary I'm gonna jump into the for the culture now.
For the culture. For the culture. For the culture. For the culture. For the culture.
There is a Dionne Warwick documentary called Don't Make Me Over. And I have to tell you, if you don't know about Dionne Warwick, you need to watch this documentary. I thought I was somebody who understood the breadth and the depths of her artistry. I absolutely did not. Dionne Warwick has sold over 100 million records worldwide. She's won many awards, including 6 Grammy Awards. She is known as one of the 40 biggest U.S. hit makers from between 1955 and 1999, and is the second most charted female vocalist from 1955 to 1999.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So what happened when Dionne, and this is why the film is so fascinating, when Dionne came out, it was right around that Motown era, but there was a bridging. There was that time between when people were listening to like Johnny Mathis and Nat King Cole, and then that switch over to Motown. And so she was kind of in the middle of that. She wasn't quite Motown R&B, but she wasn't quite the old school jazz. She was somewhere in the middle.
That
So
Burt Bacharach music. Yeah.
Yes, they were big time partners. She was essentially his muse in many ways, and so she went on to become the voice of a generation, so to speak. Some of the biggest hits that appeared in soundtracks of films and what have you was the voice of one Dionne Warwick. So she is a diva. I think our generation kind of came to know her as the cousin of Whitney Houston and the lady on the amazing huge smash hit. What is the song? The Friends.
That's what Friends are for.
Yes, thank you. That was her brainchild. Yes, that was her brainchild as part of her activism work on the in terms of the cause of AIDS. Like, she's just a phenomenal person. And again, I thought I knew a lot about her, but watching that documentary, I was like, oh, we need to be throwing way more flowers at Dionne. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, that's the For the Culture I would shout out this week is Dionne Warwick's Don't Make Me Over. It's available and streaming now on HBO Max as well as on Amazon Prime if you have access to either of those platforms.
To check that out. I will check that out.
Yeah, for sure. So congrats to Teyana Taylor, and can't wait to see the biopic when it comes out.
Dope.
What you got? What you got for the culture?
This week, Ahmad Jamal, famous jazz pianist, he passed away this week at the age of 92. Strange because he just did an interview on NPR not but a month ago because he was still touring and still doing music. Ahmad Jamal, his contemporaries are John Coltrane, Miles Davis. These are
Thelonious Monk, all of
those. All these artists grew up at the same time. And Miles Davis is quoted as saying, if I can pull it, he knocked me out with his concept of space, his lightness of touch, his understatement, and the way he phrases notes and chords and passages. Ahmad Jamal is one of the greatest pianists to ever live. He's inspired people like Ellis Marsalis, Harry Connick Jr. And I am named after Ahmad Jamal because he's one of my mother's favorite musicians. You guys are probably, for those my hip hop culture, you would know Ahmad Jamal because you know The World Is Yours by Nas. That piano riff is an Ahmad Jamal riff, one of the most famous songs in hip hop history. So I think the craziest thing about his career is that he released music up until last year at 91 years old. And when you listen to it, it's some of it's experimental, some of it's very classical, some of it, when I say classical, classic jazz. It's not bebop stuff. It's more like, it's that classic regal piano. Right. I hope that means something to people, but that very dignified piano that there's a lot of playing within it, but it takes its time. And I was just say, go ahead and listen to a little bit of Ahmad Jamal this week.
It's so funny that you said that because that was I'd written that down somewhere for us to talk about and totally this again. We keep proving why we're such good friends because like you, I grew up in a house full of jazz, always playing, and Ahmad Jamal was a constant. And probably my favorite pianist. I would say he's up there with Thelonious. I mean, the two of them are contemporaries, but I say all that to say huge loss for the jazz world, but also what a gift to have had him and his artistry for so long. So shout out to Ahmad Jamal, the legendary, iconic jazz man, and definitely go play you some Ahmad. Maybe make it a double weekend. Listen to some Dionne and listen to some Ahmad and chill yourself out a little bit. So,
Black People Weekend.
Well, I do want to. We do have a couple more, a little bit more for the bonus content. But at this point, if you are listening to the main portion of our show, we're going to wind down now. We want to thank you all. We're getting back into this groove of things, so bear with us a little bit longer. But I want to remind you that you can check out the show, not only the audio version of the show that's available on all the podcasting streaming platforms, but also you can see the video version of the show on our YouTube channel at Chief Disruptor Productions. So if this is where we leave you, thank you for joining us this week. And if you are sticking around for the bonus content, that starts right now. Some bonus content for you.
That sounded weird. Some bonus. Okay. Some bonus
lately, I've noticed I have gotten for better or for worse, I have gotten so lazy in my speech. I was like, I mean, I think it's okay to not code switch or whatever, but I was like, my accent has gotten so much thicker since I moved back home. I was like, I got to work on that. I was like, my tongue is getting heavier and heavier, so to speak. So listen, have you been using any of these AI
Oh,
apps or what have
time
you?
out. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Just randomly yesterday. Hold on. I want to read you the prompt
Okay.
that I put into an AI thing. I downloaded this app just yesterday. It's weird. Ask AI. And
Oh
I asked
yeah.
AI, what did I ask AI? I asked AI to write me a rap. And what did I say?
Did you tell
Rap
it what it was
about
about?
I said rap about squirrels in the style of Andre 3000. And yo, it's so weird you should bring this up. I just did this. I want to read you what it says. So write a rap in the style of Andre 3000 about squirrels. So verse one. Now this took them like literally about 30 seconds.
Wow.
Yo, let me tell you about a creature that's so fly with a bushy tail and some beady little eyes. They run up trees and they leap so high. They're the kings of the park and they won't be denied. I'm talking about squirrels. They're a sight to see. They're fast, they're fierce, and they're free like me. They hoard their nuts like we stack our cheese. They're the OGs of the forest and they do it with ease. I don't know if that's Andre 3000 necessarily, but it was interesting.
I will say so with my brother, he's going to kill me. I already know, but I'm still going to do it. When I was younger, my baby brother, he's 2-3 years younger than me. He and my older brother used to rap, right? Rap.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
And this rap that he had one rap and he would just build on this one rap over and over again to the point to where our entire family knows this one verse. So literally to this day, my brother will just be chilling and one of us will walk up to him and go, I'm gonna tell you once, I ain't gonna tell you again. Don't come around here trying to rap again. I'm on the mic and rocking your world. And in a few more weeks, I'll be stealing your girl. I am 45 years old, ladies and gentlemen. I have been singing that song for about 30 years because it is so classic. So when you're saying that, that's what that reminds me of. It's like, yeah, technically the language is technically a rap.
Right.
Oh yeah, I think Andre 3000's genius is safe. I think
A little bit. I think he's all right.
but I will say, to your point, I have recently started to, because I have been trying to figure out, I have a lot of work going on lately, and I was like, I've been feeling a little overwhelmed. So a friend of mine suggested, she was like, hey, start looking into some of these AI applications and seeing if there are ones, because there are several of them, particularly around content development. So whether it's captions for social media, or if it's literally drafting essays to begin, like I do a lot of one pagers for clients or whatever. So just kind of, and I use it more to generate thoughts than I do to do the actual work, right?
So it's
Like sometimes
it's like a brainstorming tool.
Yes, I get stuck. So I use it to brainstorm things and to kind of look at it from a different angle or perspective, because I work alone, right? A lot of the time. So sometimes when you don't have somebody to bounce ideas off of, so I kind of use it for those purposes. And I'll be honest, I found it very helpful. I haven't used it enough to where I'm super proficient at it, but I can see that if you continue to use it over time, because that's what happens, is that the intelligence, it gets sharper the more you feed it. But that's also the concern, right? Like, but you keep feeding the people.
This is the beginning of Terminator. You know this, right?
Like being able to go back, like we're at the beginning of the scary movie. This is not even. The bombs are gonna. We're the dumb people at the beginning of the movie. It's like, what's the worst that could
happen? Right. We're Terminator 2 Joe Morton, like, but I didn't mean for us all to happen.
There's a new show on Apple Plus that I just started watching this week. I think it's called The Big Door Prize, and I think I mentioned it to you and Nicole. I've watched 2 or 3 episodes now, and the long and the short of it is that it's supposed to be a machine that reveals your potential, what have you, and at one point, without giving anything away, in order for it to reveal people's potential, you have to give it your social security number and your fingerprints. And I was like, oh, I would be out right away. I was like, social security number. Like if you my social to figure out my potential, I'm sorry.
Nah, I'm good.
So I was like, I would be safe. Whatever's gonna end up happening in this show, I was like, I would be safe from whatever the outcome is, for better or for worse.
So wait, you in my brain, you just messed me up in my brain because you brought up this rap earlier. I'm gonna go backwards. So you brought this rap that your brothers did, and it made me think. You know about what I'm about to say, and I'm gonna use names here because the names are vital for the story.
Oh no.
So we have a friend named Cliff. And back when we're in college, Cliff is an incredible human being. I love him with all my heart, but I'm gonna put him on blast now.
I'm gonna say that makes you about to tear you apart, Cliff.
Back when we were in college, Cliff used to do this thing with we had another friend named Worm. And Cliff would do this phrase. He does this. He does these stupid rap lyrics all the time. We'd make fun of him, but he'd do this phrase where he's just like, "Worm is a bitch." Now him and Worm are best friends, right? They're best friends. That's the joke of it. He'd just be like, "Worm is a bitch." And like the rhyme would go further. Sometimes he'd add lyrics to it, but the main chorus was "Worm is a bitch," and he did it so much that the "Worm is a bitch" became independent of Worm.
Oh my God. So people started humming it like it's
so like no, literally me and Les like "Worm is a bitch," and like the Worm's like, what are you doing? No. I'm sorry, this means nothing
about
to
you.
anybody.
It's just a filler.
Yeah, it's just a filler. Like we're just saying it now because it's catchy. And he's like, what the fuck are y'all doing? Right. Oh, I'm sorry, Jason, and I'm sorry, Cliff.
Well, I know
now it's in my head right now.
Right. I do want us to wind down, but the one last thing I wanted to bring up was, have you heard that Marie Kondo? You've heard of Marie Kondo, right? Like she's the queen of minimalization, basically. Like she's the person who's like, get rid of things if they don't bring you joy, right? Like people did this whole thing where they're like trying to clear out their space and so long story short,
the anti-hoarders. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Marie Kondo has decided she's done Marie Kondoing. She's like, I need to be able to live in mess and I need to live. I don't want to always be. So this tidy expert has decided that she no longer wants to.
She's like, give me all of my shit back. I'm tired of not having my shit.
Oh, I was like, that is my greatest fear. Like, even in doing this show publicly, I was like, we say so many things. And I'm like, I recognize that as human beings, we're forever growing and evolving and changing. I was like, it's going to be interesting to look back on this show, be like on the first season saying, oh, remember when I said I would never do that? Well, here we are.
Jamal has all the guns now. Why is he?
Or look, Jamal and his best friend, Mark Wahlberg, are hanging out at the shooting range.
Y'all, hell no. See, y'all trying to trigger me. I got triggered last night, but never mind.
Well, sir, I think we are fully and officially back in the swing of things. So I think it's been a good week, and I think we can go ahead and say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye to the people.
Thanks for hanging out with us, y'all. Have a good week. Peace out.
Whatever We Want with J&K is produced by Chief Disruptor Productions, with post-production support by Lee George. To see the video version of this episode of Whatever We Want with exclusive extended content, be sure to subscribe to @Chief Disruptor Productions on YouTube. Stay up to date when we post new content by subscribing to the show on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Pandora, and most podcast streaming platforms. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook @Chief Disruptor Productions and share your recommendations for viewer topics. See y'all next week. Peace.